The White Sox are making walk-off victories feel normal, and that's another reason to not panic about the team's playoff hopes.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter. On today's show, we'll get to this week's Minor League Monday report. That comes after discussing how Luis Robert Jr.'s return to right field served as a reminder that the White Sox need to replace Luisangel Acuña if they can by September 1st. But first, let's talk about the White Sox winning 2 games against the Mets in walk-off fashion, being another example of keeping calm during the playoff race. Of course, the way the White Sox took 2 of 3 from the Mets was stressful. However, 11 wins via walk-off is a big reason Chicago is in first place. It's also another example of why the season has been so magical, despite this feeling that doomsday is just around the corner. Because the White Sox, yes, they have been terrible this season, hitting with runners in scoring position. They have had issues with their pitching staff. But they lead the American League in walk-off victories and runs scored. So you can worry about sustainability, but you know what? That's a problem for the offseason. Because right now, this team just keeps finding ways to win. And that is why, once again, the panic, the doomsdayers saying, oh, the sky is falling. Just let it subside. Enjoy the ride. Yes, it can be stressful. Yes, it can be nail-biting. Yes, my blood pressure is unhealthy right now. But the White Sox keep finding ways to win when they need to win. Now, frustration, that's one thing. And I'm not here to sing the praises of Luis Castillo or the trade deadline moves that were made or Colson Montgomery suddenly becoming a one-outcome guy. Yeah, that's frustrating. Those are some worries. But remember, winning is winning. And the magic number doesn't care how a win is earned. You're not trying to get in the NCAA tournament here, where style points matter. Wins are wins, and that's what gets you into the playoffs. And the White Sox, they just need to keep winning series. Put the pressure on the Guardians, the Twins, or the Tigers to go on some crazy run. Stop putting the pressure on the White Sox. That's what I would say to the Doomsdayer crowd. Stop putting the pressure on this team. And not because, oh, they can't handle it. It's because they just need to win series. Yeah, it'd be great if they went on like a 10, 15-game win streak. But they're not constructed to go on those runs. They're just not. I'm sorry. They don't have enough pitching talent. They're a good team. They're not a great team. But if they keep winning series, they keep reducing their magic number. And guess what, folks? The magic number is now under 30. Because thanks to Jake Rogers' walk-off 2-run blast on Friday, and Tristan Peters going deep in the 9th yesterday, the White Sox magic number is 29. And if 86 wins is still the number Baseball Reference is spitting out that the White Sox need to get to win the division, they just got to pick up 18 more W's. And yeah, it's stressful. But if they do it via walk-off, so be it. If they do it via comeback victory, so be it. It doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to be. It just has to happen. And one way they're making it happen is the walk-off. They have 11 wins via walk-off. That is a huge reason why the White Sox are even in first place compared to dead last like they were last year. The 2025 White Sox had only 3 walk-off victories. Chicago, they've got 5 walk-off victories via home run alone this season. And they had 3 coming into this weekend. And then Jake Rogers, beautiful home run. And Tristan Peters, Sunday, beautiful home run. And it was such a great story, too, on Friday with the lady who caught the home run ball with Jake Rogers. All her stuff flying out of her purse. Just she's so happy that the White Sox won. And I think sometimes we've got a fan base that is in the moment, that is enjoying it. But then we've got a portion of the fan base, and I'm not here to lecture. It's just to that doomsdayer crowd, relax. It's going to be okay. And that does speak again to what is your perception, Ben, right now in terms of what is success. To me, to a lot of us that have been, and this isn't, because again, you had every right to get off the bandwagon. I'm not here to place restrictions on how you have to come back onto the bandwagon. You had every right to get off, but those that are coming back compared to those that were still staying on, it's going to change a little bit. Again, this season is already a success. Okay? It is a success. Success. Okay? Try saying that fast 3 times. Success. But it's where the White Sox, again, it was all about getting internal improvement, getting more core players in that next wave. Hagen Smith already looks like he's already reached his floor. He looks like he's going to be a big league pitcher. Now it just is, what is his role? Grant Taylor, one of the better relievers. Maybe he's a starter. Yes, sometimes it's not very good that he's blowing saves. But again, we still haven't defined his role. So that's the other thing. They still have to define things, and they're still winning. And they're winning on things on the margins like comeback victories or winning single-run games. I mean, being 23-20 in single-run games is helping their win total, obviously, on the margins because it's tied for the most victories in close games. They're 23-13 against the AL Central Division. That matters. And I bring this up because you would think taking 2 of 3 from the Mets would be something to be happy about. But you still got this vibe of, they had to slug it out with the Mets. And yeah, I did say on Friday's show, it's got to be a series to get right. And they still didn't look obviously right, but it still was get right in the fact of win the series. They had lost 3 of 4. They come back, they take 2 of 3. And obviously to the Doomsdayers, you are right in a way that there's still some issues that is going to make the postseason stay short. It was on full display. I mean, this is a flawed team, no doubt about it. But it still has enough going in its favor that it is one of the few good teams in the awful American League. So winning via the walk-off with 8 different players coming up clutch, that should be one reason to still be hopeful that the White Sox will be playing postseason baseball. Now, if you want things cleaner, obviously I'm with you. 2 for 20 in the series with runners in scoring position, unacceptable. Especially on Saturday night, when the White Sox had plenty of scoring opportunities. Colson Montgomery's 7 strikeouts, that wipes out his home run on Friday night. And he was building some positive momentum, and it's just Munetaka Murakami. He's got 4 dingers in his past 15 days, but he's also barely doing anything else, including getting on base lately. Luis Castillo, Huáscar Brazoban, they have not hit the ground running since being acquired. Taylor keeps, going 7 of 13 in save opportunities. Gives you a little anxiety. But flaws, that's been the name of the game this season. I mean, 33 comeback victories. That's part of it is you're giving up leads, but they still come back. It's frustrating. I know. But you got to go through the full ride. And finding a way is what makes this season more special. And what makes this special, too, is this team keeps facing adversity, and they find ways to win because they're 25th in the league in batting average with runners in scoring position, where, remember, average still counts. Yet they have the 14th most RBIs in RISP situations and the 6th most home runs in scoring chances per Fangraphs. I mean, it just feels like they should not be winning these many close games or walk-off, or how do they have this many runs in the American League? And yet they keep finding a way. Well, Luis Robert Jr., he returned to right field, and it served as another reminder that the White Sox should try to replace Luisangel Acuña by September 1st that I want to discuss next. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. And that's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place. And Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working towards the same goal. And that's true in sports just like it is in business. I mean, Chicago's trade deadline moves, they were heavily criticized, but not the picks the club made in the draft last month. It was an excellent collaborative process that earned a lot of praise. And think about it. The Southsiders have gone from being a laughingstock to a playoff contender because of better processes being used by the front office. And great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. This is now my third season podcasting here. I've been covering the team well before that. I've also covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Talent was never the question with Luis Robert Jr. It was availability and dedication. That was always the problem. The inconsistency, the injuries. And that is actually what eroded the trade return to basically Luisangel Acuña and a pitching prospect. That was the market value. That was what the White Sox were going to get. A utility player and a scratch-off. That 2023 trade value that everybody thought was still going to be applied in 2025 or 2024. Or, hey, let's roll the dice once more time. Just wasn't there anymore. 29 other teams realized, yeah, he's a talented player, but he's never available. And when he is, you don't know what version you're going to get. Are you going to get the high ceiling, the 2023 version? Or are you going to get this injured mess who has these bad legs that's not going to be able to drive the ball that much? And I would just say, just getting rid of the risk of LRJ not being in the lineup is what made that trade worth it. Because it's not working. Obviously, it hasn't worked out well for the White Sox. And it didn't really work out well for the Mets. Although LRJ reminded us, again, he could still be very talented. Hit 2 home runs on Saturday. And it's definitely not a good look that Acuña never became the team's starting center fielder like was envisioned. And now he's no longer a hitter who can provide even a single at the bottom of the order when facing a lefty. And that's why Future Sox's James Fox's tweet yesterday regarding Luis Robert Jr. possibly being waived served as another reminder. You know what? Actually, we should also move on from Luisangel Acuña if possible, especially after the premise of Fox's tweet and this response that I like from somebody who responded to James's tweet. So this is a tweet at JamesFox917. We're about a week away from contenders claiming veterans on waivers for the final stretch. I'll be curious to see if Luis Robert Jr. ends up somewhere. Who are obvious candidates to move? Options for hashtag White Sox ? And then at ShySox34, he responded, it would be great if they can get a right-handed shortstop upgrade from Acuña on the bench. And I fully agree with that assessment right there because Acuña's little run of belting singles in June and July, it's over. And he's been awful. He's been back to what we saw in April and May. I mean, basically now all you got is a decent glove, weak hitting shortstop that is having to play on days the club is facing lefties. And that's turning that lineup now, when you're facing lefties, down 2 batters. Although Jake Rogers, appreciate that walk-off home run. But that's kind of what's happening now. So even if Jake Rogers hits a home run like he did on Friday, it's still 9 on 8. And if you put Drew Romo in there, it's 9 on 7. So that's why if they could get an upgrade off the waiver wire, go for it. Because obviously the White Sox could use pitching. We know that. And it can't hurt for them to roll the dice on a veteran that gets put on. And it's a special type of waivers that James is mentioning, where you can up until September 1st, you can put veterans on waivers. It's kind of like what they used to do with the waiver trade deadline. Doesn't mean they're DFA, doesn't mean they're cut. They're just put on waivers, and a team can claim them. And then they assume their salary. That's what happened with Aaron Savale, for example, when the Cubs grabbed him. It's basically teams are trying to shed a month's worth of payroll. That's all that is. But the White Sox, I think, are going to be able to get a little bit of pitching help once rosters expand on September 1st. They can either call up Drew Thorpe or return him from the 60-day IL and bring him up. Noah Schultz or Tanner McDougal, that kind of seems to be the feeling that they're going to bring up whoever it is when rosters expand to 28. I mean, Shane Smith, he continues to be shaking the minors, so he's probably not going to be called up. David Sandlin also, again, had another rough outing. So you're probably looking at Thorpe, Schultz, or McDougal as your pitching reinforcement. But then when it comes to your bench, I think, the kind of the hint and the feeling is they're probably going to call up Rico Nishida because he can fill that pinch runner role. But infield-wise, he only plays second base, and he's left-handed. So they could use a right-handed backup infielder if they can find it from the outside, if they can get it. Now, obviously, the risk is you could be claiming, obviously, a declining veteran player who still has money left on a contract, because, again, that's what some of these teams are trying to do. However, there could be a veteran out there that a team is just looking to save, again, even just a few bucks on a one-year deal just to get it off their books, or a guy that, is going to be due a decent payout number or buyout number, and the team would love to save some cash on that too. It's why James is correct on speculating that the Mets would probably put Robert Jr. on that waivers, hoping someone assumes the last month of his deal and his buyout, because I don't see any team exercising that $20 million option. And now for those that read it, I kind of read it the first way too, suggesting that the White Sox should bring back LRJ. You kind of got to read it a few times to be like, oh, James is not suggesting that. Well, and there was in the comments, and even I kind of did that, but no. We're not bringing back Luis Robert Jr. While obviously Tristan Peters doesn't hit for power like Louis, and he doesn't have the arm, Peters is available. He hits for better contact, and he can actually run this season, where LRJ's injuries, it's limited his ability to even steal bases. And whether you like Brenton Doyle or not, it seems like this is a guy that the club is committed to in the long run, or at least saying, if he could work on some swing issues, can that make a serviceable Peters Doyle platoon next year until someone in the minors can be developed to be a long-term solution? The only thing when I was even watching the series over the weekend, the only thing that I was kind of missing from LRJ was he does have a way better arm than Tristan Peters. But otherwise, I'm glad to have Tristan here over Luis. However, seeing Acuña slashing 167, 200, 167 in August, and now he's hitting 220 with a 476 OPS against lefties. If there's something available on the waiver wire, go and grab it. Otherwise, all Acuña is now is he provides some pinch running ability. That's basically the only value he has. And he can play some decent defense. But he's back to being an automatic out that has to play against lefties. And if they can somehow even slightly get an upgrade, it's worth looking into. Well, one talent that must be developed to the fullest is Caleb Bonemer. And I'll discuss why next. A big thank you to our friends at Amazon for this limited break. This back-to-school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy the back-to-school shopping experience can be. It starts with a few items on the list, and then suddenly you're shopping for supplies and clothes and lunch gear and tech and about 10 other things you didn't see coming. It adds up fast. When you buy clothes for back-to-school, then your kid has that growth spurt about 2 weeks later, you're right back to where you started. And sometimes it genuinely feels like my daughter is growing faster than what my budget can keep up with. or when you start shopping for a few back-to-school essentials and realize how quickly the list grows. Again, you're thinking you're just getting supplies, but then it's got to be clothes and lunch gear and headphones, and it just keeps going and going and going. And that's why finding low prices on all things you need makes such a big difference this time of year. And that's why my wife and I, we're always turning to Amazon for our back-to-school shopping needs, and basically just our shopping needs in general. Helps us find a ton of deals and save some money to spend on things my daughter really wants us to spend on her, like her Christmas wish list. So remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. I hope you had a great weekend. Again, the White Sox taking 2 of 3, made it a good weekend. Mine also kind of had a fun little Sunday after the White Sox won. Went to Zoo a la carte at the Milwaukee County Zoo. For those that obviously, I live behind the Cheddar Curtain, but for those that are looking for something fun to do, towards the end of the summer every year, come up Milwaukee County Zoo. It's very affordable, and they have Zoo a la carte. They have all these cool little, food vendors out. They got great food, and they got some music going on, which is pretty cool. And you can kind of have a fun day while eating some really good food. They had an amazing corn on the cob stand. They just had it all just completely just covered in butter. Oh, I know my arteries took a hit, but it was so worth it. So that's my recommendation. It's usually always towards the end of August, Zoo a la carte. Well, Caleb Bonemer, he keeps hitting bombs. Absolute rockets. And the prospect huggers should rejoice that the team kept their second best prospect and the number 30 overall prospect per MLB pipeline, because baseball because he keeps hitting bombs. The amount of dingers he hit, because the amount of dingers he's hit puts him in a company that when I read the names, I hope like heck the White Sox can make sure they develop Caleb Bonemer to his ceiling. Because the amount of home runs he has hit for the White Sox affiliates is in the same company of no one's. It is, again, another reason to be hopeful. But what matters with every prospect is you got to make sure the kids can get better and better every day. And especially Caleb, because if he can translate his prodigious power to the big leagues, that is going to be a huge boost for the club down the line, even as soon as next year's club. And then there's no need to panic about Roch, Cholowsky, or Billy Carlson being shut down for the rest of the season. It's the right call as they're dealing with some ailments, and there's like 2 weeks left in the minor league season. I mean, yeah, it would be nice for them to continue to get as many at-bats as possible, but it's not like they're going to be missing out on months and months of at-bats. It's 2 weeks. Kannapolis is ending. Winston-Salem is ending, but the team announced Cholowsky is being shut down as he's dealing with a wrist injury, and Carlson, he's being shut down as he's dealing with a skin infection in his left leg. And the treatment as well. So, doesn't sound too comfortable there. But it means Cholowsky's numbers at high A in his first season in professional ball is not going to look great. 167, 326, 333 slash line. But remember, he played just 9 games, and the wrist injury seems to be a symptom of just, he went from playing some intense college baseball, and he played, I believe, like every game for UCLA to the minors. And he didn't get a ton of time off, obviously. So I'm fine with the decision to just let him rest. And actually, I kind of hope they don't send him to the Arizona Fall League. I know that there's kind of some speculation that he could be a candidate, but I mean, the guy's been playing since February. And it was not like ease into February like what happens in spring training. They don't have spring training in college. First game of the year counts. They got to go. And what it should be is just make sure that wrist gets right. And really for him, it's individual instruction as much as can be allowed before the lockout on, again, the swing adjustments he has to make. Because that's really the only thing that Roch has to work on. especially in the preload. And the White Sox did identify that. And remember, no prospect in the draft is perfect. Grady Emerson has his questions. Vaughn Lackey is going to have his questions. It was where the White Sox, they just were able to pick among 3 really good prospects. But Cholowsky, remember, had the high floor and the high ceiling to go with it. And it's just a few, changes that just have to be made. And I get the idea to have him go to Arizona once that wrist heals up to get some more professional at bats. But right now, again, it's just fixing some swing issues. And honestly, that can be done in the cage once the wrist is healed. And then he can resume his at bats next season, whenever it starts. Carlson, the team's number 3 prospect in Emma, and he's also the number 62 prospect per MLB pipeline overall, will end his season with a 252, 380, 335 slash line in 60 games at low A. Obviously, he battled some injuries this season, so I wonder if he's going to go back to low A next year. Obviously, the glove is playing, so all that matters is what does he do at the plate. I did like the 380 OBP, but the key is he's got to be able to hit for powers. He didn't register a dinger, and there's a belief that there's still 20 home run potential in his bat, and he's still 20 years old. So obviously, plenty of time to keep working on his swing. But one guy that is showing his swing is powerful and impressive is Bonermar. And he went yard 3 times last week. And remember, it's Bonermar, not Bonermar, not Bonermar. Because it sounds like the Chattanooga announcer had some tough times. Bonermar. And I get it. I was there too. But Caleb has now hit 33 home runs on the season between stops at high A and now he's at double A ball. And MLB.com, White Sox beat writer Scott Merkin, he discovered this little nugget that puts Caleb in the same company as Ian Gack and Brad Eldred. This is what Scott Merkin tweeted at Scott Merkin, the last White Sox minor leaguer, the last White Sox minor leaguer to hit 33 home runs in a season before Bonermar, Ian Gack, I think it's Gack, in 2011. Next on the list for Bonermar, Brad Eldred with 35 in 2008. And when I saw those numbers, I was like, please don't end up like this guy. Now, granted, Gack was a 26th round pick via the Texas Rangers. And Eldred was a 6th round pick the Pirates made. And then, the White Sox claimed him, both of them. And, when you're a 26th round pick, it's really hard envisioning getting to the show. And Gack never did. Eldred only played 90 games in the big leagues across 4 seasons with the Pirates, Rockies, and Tigers with 15 career home runs. But like we saw with Tim Elko last year, hitting home runs in the minors is not the same as hitting home runs in the majors. But why I'm still hopeful about Caleb is obviously he's got the higher upside and he's got more tools to work with to potentially not only just make it, but make an impact. And for example, he's definitely shown this idea that he was stiff. That was one of the reasons why he fell in the draft. It was false. And I like the makeup of his swing in his preload. It's sort of actually kind of what Jacob Gonzalez did with his swing to turn his career around and get to the majors. It's a little bit more closed off. And that's where I just get a little concerned because we saw, Jacob in the minors being a tick closed off can, lead to some issues. But even then, you just make a minor little tinker, and I think he's ready to go. I mean, because how he has it, he's almost like a twisted. It just allows him to explode on the ball. And that's where I get excited about his potential to hit 30 to 45 homers a year for the White Sox. And think about it. He's 20, and he's hitting 15 home runs at Double A, where going yard can be difficult in the Southern League. So I'm excited about this young man. And what makes me even more excited, he's had 806 at-bats already. What does that mean? He's ahead of schedule. He's potentially not too far away from actually helping this club in the near future. If they're using the Baltimore Orioles model for developing young hitters, because they once did do that really well, especially when Ryan Fuller was there, who's now the hitting director, he's closing in on Gunnar Henderson's 933 at-bats and 1,107 plate appearances. So unless the Barons somehow make the Southern League playoffs, their game back in the second half of the standings, I wonder if they're going to actually challenge him and send him to AAA for just a few days worth of at-bats, because the Barons season ends on the 13th, the Knights the following week, so it can't hurt to give him a taste. Just a taste, because the goal should be he should at least be at AAA by June next year. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. I'll be back tomorrow with Besnick Security of OnTapSportsNet.com. Discuss why every game should not be a referendum on the White Sox being able to contend. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, or wherever you get your audio podcasts. This show is available on places such as Apple or Spotify. You can email me with questions or comments to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can follow me at Todd J. Dub. Also, the show has a TikTok page at Locked On White Sox. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB Game Night every game, every night until World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or listen to your podcast. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.